I wasn't supposed to fall for her. She was the kind of woman who had already lived a whole lifetime before I even learned how to stand on my own. But one night, in the silent glow of an empty cafe, she looked at me and said, "If you take one more step, I'm yours." And in that moment, the world stopped waiting for permission. I first saw her the way you notice something important before you understand why. The cafe wasn't anything special, small, tucked between a florist and a hardware store, with soft jazz playing just loud enough to fill silence without disturbing thought. I came there because I didn't know what else to do with myself. I had left my old job without a plan, and the world felt a bit too wide, a bit too loud. Drawing helped. So I sat in the corner with my sketchbook, hoping the pencil would say what I couldn't. She was the one running the small poetry night that evening. Not the host, just the person quietly making sure everything worked. Lighting candles, adjusting chairs, speaking softly to each performer. No spotlight, no announcement, just presence. And yet, somehow, the room felt arranged around her. She looked to be in her mid-40s, the kind of beauty that isn't trying to be noticed, the kind that simply is. Her hair was tied loosely, a few strands escaping near her cheek. Her skin carried the quiet confidence of someone who has lived, felt, and survived. She moved gracefully, like she had learned to protect her softness without losing it. I tried to sketch the room, the candles, the tables, the curve of light on the wooden floor, but my eyes kept drifting back to her hands. Not delicate, not fragile, capable, gentle in a way that came from intention, not weakness. I didn't draw her face. Something about that felt too personal. But her hands, the way they lingered when she placed a glass down, the way she brushed a crumb from the counter with careful attention, those felt like truth. I didn't think she'd notice. I was wrong. When the event ended and people slowly filtered out, I stayed at my table, finishing a line. I didn't hear her approach, not until her voice, low, warm, with just a hint of laughter underneath, cut through the quiet. "Are you drawing feelings? Or people?" I looked up. She was standing close enough that I could smell her perfume. Subtle, a gentle blend of amber and citrus, the kind that stays soft on the air instead of shouting. She didn't look amused or flattered, just curious, present. I handed her the sketchbook without really thinking. If she saw herself in it, I wanted it to be honest. She flipped through the pages slowly, not skimming, not rushing. When she reached the drawing of her hands, she paused. Her brows softened, not like she was complimented, but like she understood something unspoken. "You noticed?" she said quietly, almost to herself. I nodded. She traced one finger lightly over the pencil lines, and then she returned the sketchbook to me. Her fingertip brushed my hand, lightly, intentionally. Not an accident. Her smile wasn't flirtatious. It was warm, genuine, the kind that makes your chest feel a little too small. "I'm glad someone still sees details," she said. And just like that, something unhurried, unspoken, and undeniably real began. I started going to the cafe more often after that. Not out of romantic intention, at least not consciously. It was just peaceful there. My thoughts felt quieter when I was around her. The world didn't feel like it was pushing me forward faster than I could move. Her name was Elena. She told me the second time I came in, though she didn't offer it the way most people do, expecting a return introduction. She said it like a simple truth, a gentle invitation. I told her my name, and she repeated it softly, once, like she was trying it on her tongue. I liked the way she said it. Steady, sure. We fell into a rhythm without ever discussing it. No plans made. No expectations set. Just two people who kept finding themselves in the same space, choosing not to leave. She worked mostly behind the counter, but she would always drift over to my table when there was a quiet moment. Sometimes we spoke. Sometimes we didn't. The silence was never uncomfortable. It felt like sitting beside a warm window in winter, the world still there, but softened. She was different from the people my age. When she spoke, she didn't fill space with noise. She didn't talk to impress. She listened. She remembered small things, the places I hesitated, the things I didn't say. If my voice caught halfway through a thought, she noticed and she'd wait. giving me room to continue or not. No pressure, just presence. One evening, near closing time, the cafe was nearly empty. She carried 2 mugs over, tea for herself, coffee for me, and sat down in the chair beside mine instead of across from me. Not close, not intimate, just near enough that our knees brushed every now and then when either of us shifted. And neither of us moved away. She asked about my drawings, not what they were of, but what I felt when I made them. No one had ever asked me that. Not really. I didn't have a perfect answer. I told her drawing helped me understand myself, even when I didn't know what I was trying to say. She looked at me for a long moment. Not searching, not analyzing, just seeing. I used to paint, she said softly. Why did you stop? I asked. Her breath came in slowly, like she was choosing her words with care. Life got louder than my voice, she said. And one day I realized I couldn't hear myself at all. She looked down at her hands, the same hands I had drawn, and there was something in her expression I hadn't seen before. Not sadness, something gentler, something like acceptance of an old grief. I wanted to touch her hand, not to comfort, but to say I see you. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I said, you could still start again. She smiled, small, real, a little tired. Maybe, she said. Maybe not. But it's nice that someone thinks I could. The cafe lights were dim by then, and the world outside the windows had gone soft and blue with evening. The clock ticked somewhere behind us. Our knees were still touching. We didn't point it out. We didn't need to. Something was growing, slowly, carefully, and neither of us tried to stop it. It happened on a Thursday evening, the kind where daylight lingers longer than expected, holding on to the edges of buildings as if reluctant to let go. The cafe had closed already. Chairs stacked, counters wiped, and I was leaving just as she stepped outside to lock up. That was when her phone rang. I didn't mean to overhear, but sound carries differently in quiet twilight. Her voice, usually calm and controlled, tightened as soon as she answered. I couldn't hear the words on the other side of the call, but I could hear the tone, cold, sharp in the way familiarity can be when it turns into something weaponized. She said very little back, just small responses like, yes, I know, and that's not fair, spoken in a voice that was both tired and trying to stay steady. When she hung up, she didn't move. She stood with her hand still on the phone at her side, staring at the pavement like trying to remember how to breathe. I didn't walk away. I didn't ask if she was okay. I just stepped close enough to stand beside her. Not touching, not speaking, just there. Sometimes presence is the kindest language. After a moment, her breath shuddered out, the kind that carries weeks' worth of held-in words. She didn't look at me right away. She kept her eyes forward as she spoke. That was my ex-husband, she said quietly. Not explained, just stated. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She was offering context. I nodded, not to interrupt, just to show I was listening. She slowly tucked her hair behind her ear, trying to regain structure in herself. But her voice gave her away, soft, frayed at the edges. He wants to change the weekends again. For our daughter. A pause. He does this thing where he frames everything like I'm unreasonable for wanting stability. And I know it's not about winning. I know it's just parenting. But sometimes it feels like he still gets to decide who I'm allowed to be. I didn't speak. She didn't need advice. She needed space to be seen. She finally looked at me then, and it was not a casual look. It was raw, direct. Something in it felt like a door opening, careful, slow, but intentional. I don't like being needed, she said. I don't want to be someone's answer to loneliness. I like being chosen, because of who I am, not because of what I can provide. Her voice trembled there, not with weakness, but with a truth she rarely allowed herself to say. And before I could think, I answered softly, sincerely, I'm here because I want to be. No performance, no expectation, no claim, just truth. Her eyes didn't fill with tears, but they softened, as if something inside her finally remembered how to unclench. We stood there in the cooling air, the streetlights humming faintly above us, our shadows overlapping softly on the pavement. She didn't touch me, but the distance between us felt thinner than ever, a line not yet crossed, but now undeniably visible. It was the kind of rain that arrives without warning. Sudden, heavy, insistent. The kind that makes the world sound softer and closer. I had stayed later than usual at the cafe that night, lost in sketching. Elena was closing up, moving through her quiet routine, wiping the counter, checking the register, dimming the lights. The warm lamplight made everything feel gentler, like the evening was holding its breath. When I finally looked up, the windows were streaked with water. The rain had turned the street outside into a blurred watercolor of headlights and reflections. I hadn't even noticed the change in weather. She walked over to the door, watched the rain for a moment, and let out a low, amused sigh. "Well," she said, glancing back at me. "I hope you weren't planning to walk home." I shook my head, smiling. "I don't mind the rain." She raised an eyebrow, the expressive kind that says she knows better than you even when she's teasing. "No one actually likes walking in this," she said. But there was something else under her tone. Not just playfulness. A flicker of awareness. Of us being alone. Of the hour. Of the world outside becoming distant and the room inside becoming smaller. She made tea, chamomile for her, peppermint for me. Something that had become quietly ours. We sat at one of the corner tables, where the overhead lights had already been dimmed. Only the small lamps by the counter were still glowing, bathing the cafe in amber tones. We spoke in the kinds of voices people use when they don't want to disturb the moment. She told me about a poem she liked, something about carrying entire worlds inside your chest. I listened not to the words, but to the way she said them. Soft, thoughtful, like she was giving me something precious without calling attention to it. I told her about a sketch I couldn't quite finish, how something about it felt incomplete. She didn't offer critique. She just asked what I was trying to find in it. The question settled in me like a stone in calm water, rippling outward. The rain kept falling. Time felt like it stopped paying attention. At some point, our hands ended up near each other on the table. Not touching, just close enough to feel the warmth radiating across that small distance. The kind of closeness where a person's presence becomes an atmosphere. She looked at our hands, then at me. Her gaze was steady, but there was something fragile at the edges, like hope wrapped in caution. Slowly, she reached out. Her fingertips brushed the back of my hand, a feather-light touch. Not claiming, not asking, just acknowledging. Felt like a confession. And for a moment, the kind suspended outside of ordinary time, I leaned closer. Not enough to break anything, just enough to almost let something begin. But she withdrew her hand. Not quickly, not coldly, just gently, like setting down something delicate. "You're young," she whispered. "You don't know what this could cost you." I didn't respond right away. We both sat with the truth of it, the rain filling the silence. But I knew then the line between us was no longer theoretical. It was real, and we were already standing close to it. The next few days felt uneven, as if something in the air had shifted and I was the only one who noticed. The cafe was still there. The bell above the door still chimed the same soft way when I walked in. The familiar smell of coffee and vanilla still wrapped around me. But she wasn't. Not absent, not entirely. Just further away. She spoke to me like before, yes. She smiled. She asked how I'd been. But the closeness, the ease, the quiet gravity between us, had been pulled back like the tide. She kept a careful, deliberate distance, both physically and emotionally. Her movements were measured. Her voice was gentle but guarded. And her eyes, they didn't linger anymore. It was subtle but unmistakable, the way someone pulls away not because they want to, but because they believe they have to. I tried not to take it personally. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. But I wasn't. Something had changed the night of the rain. Something fragile had stirred awake, and she was afraid of it. For a while, I let her have the distance. I didn't want to push her. I didn't want to turn something delicate into something forced. But the space between us grew heavy, like a room where all the windows are closed and the air has stopped moving. One evening, I found her in the back storage room, restocking cups. Not hiding but retreating, giving herself something simple to focus on. She didn't look up when she said, "You don't have to check on me." I leaned against the doorframe. I didn't say anything. She placed a stack of cups on the shelf a little too carefully. "You didn't have to." Silence stretched, not empty, but full. When she finally turned to face me, the expression in her eyes hurt more than any rejection could have. Not anger, not regret, fear. Not of me, but of how much she already felt. Her voice was quiet when she spoke. Not trembling, controlled, but only just enough to hold. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "You're young. You still have time to change. To want someone else. To look back and wonder what you were thinking." I stepped forward once. Not too close, just enough to meet her eyes directly. "I don't want something temporary," I said. "I don't want something to pass the time, or something that fades when life gets complicated. I want what feels real. I want you, not an idea of you, not a moment of you. You." Her breath broke. Not loud, just a faint, involuntary sound. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if bracing herself against the feeling of being seen. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "If I let myself want you," she said, "I won't know how to stop." There it was. The truth she had been holding alone. Not that she didn't want me, but that she wanted me too much. I didn't touch her. I didn't rush the moment. I simply said, quietly, sincerely, "I'm not asking you to stop." And the silence that followed felt like the air before lightning. Charged, waiting, alive. The cafe felt different that night. Maybe it was the lighting, dimmer than usual, as if the room itself understood something meaningful was about to happen. Maybe it was the silence, thick, full, like an inhale held too long. Or maybe it was simply that both of us had run out of places to hide. She stood behind the counter, drying the same glass long after it was already dry. Her movements were precise, controlled, the kind a person uses when their heart is anything but. I sat at my usual corner table, sketchbook closed this time. No pencil, no distraction, just waiting without rushing her. She finally set the glass down. But instead of walking over, she leaned both hands on the counter and looked at me. Really looked. Her eyes were calm, but not cold. There was warmth there, yes, but also caution, history, memory. The things that love has to live alongside, not erase. "I need to ask you something," she said. Her voice didn't waver, but there was something raw beneath the steadiness. A question that was heavier than the words it took to speak it. I nodded. She walked slowly from behind the counter, each step measured, not hesitant, intentional. She stopped a few feet away from me, close enough to touch but far enough that we didn't. She folded her arms gently across her chest, not defensive. More like she was holding herself together. "You're still at the beginning of things," she said softly. "And I'm somewhere in the middle. I've already made mistakes. I've already loved people the wrong way. I've already lost things I can't get back." Her eyes didn't drift away. She held mine steady, unflinching. "If you choose me," she continued, "it won't be simple. I can't promise easy. I can't promise forever. I can't even promise I won't be afraid sometimes." Her voice softened then, just a breath. "But I can promise I'll care, deeply, and honestly, and I won't take you for granted. Not for 1 second." I stood slowly, not with urgency, but with clarity. She didn't move away. She watched every inch of the distance close, her breathing shallow and careful. But before I reached her, she lifted a hand. Not touching me, just creating a line in the air. A boundary, a choice. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but the words landed with the weight of everything we had become. "If you take one more step, I'm yours." It was not an invitation to claim her. It was not surrender. It was trust. Trust that I understood the cost. Trust that I wasn't acting from impulse. Trust that I saw her, all of her, and still wanted to stay. For a moment, the world was silent. My heart was loud, yes, but my mind was steady. I knew what I felt. And more importantly, I knew why. I took the step, Not rushed, not dramatic, just sure. Her breath left her all at once. Not in surprise, but in relief, like a door finally allowed to open. And the space between us, once careful, once fragile, simply dissolved. You said. When I stepped toward her, she didn't rush into my arms. She didn't collapse into the moment or melt into some dramatic kiss. She simply exhaled. A quiet, trembling breath that felt like years of protecting herself finally loosening. Her eyes closed for just a second, like she needed that tiny pause to believe this was real, that someone had seen the full weight of her and still moved closer. When she opened her eyes again, they were softer, not unguarded but open, present. She lifted her hand, slowly, and placed her palm flat against my chest. Not claiming me, not pulling me in, just feeling me. My heartbeat was impossibly loud, but she smiled, small and warm, like she could feel the sincerity in it. And then, without hurry, she stepped forward into me. Her head rested against my shoulder, her arms looped loosely around my waist. It wasn't passion. It wasn't heat. It was home, the kind of closeness that asks nothing and gives everything. I wrapped my arms around her. Slow, steady, mindful, like holding something sacred and human and real. We stood like that for a long time. The cafe was quiet, the rain still threading softly against the windows, the world outside moving on without us. She fit against me not like someone being saved, but like someone finally letting themselves lean. After a while, she spoke. Voice low, words touching my collarbone before my ears. You have to understand something, she whispered. Love, at my age, it's not about being swept away. It's about choosing to stay when the world changes around you. I nodded, my cheek resting in her hair. I'm not here to be temporary. She pulled back just enough to look at me. Only inches away now. Her hand rose to my jaw, thumb brushing once along my cheek. The touch was feather-soft, but intentional, like she was memorizing the way I felt under her fingertips. I believe you, she said, not as a promise, as a trust, a beginning. She didn't kiss me then, and I didn't ask her to. We didn't need to rush toward proof of something that had already rooted itself deep. Instead, we walked home together through the rain. Not under one umbrella. We didn't bother. We just moved side by side, coats damp, hair dripping, laughing quietly as water ran down our faces. Felt like being young. Felt like being alive. It felt like choosing something real and whole and difficult and beautiful. When we reached her door, she paused, keys in her hand, rain still glistening on her eyelashes. She looked at me, really looked, and there was no hesitation in her voice anymore. Come in, she said softly. Not for a night, not for a moment, just come in. And I did, not because I was swept away, but because I had chosen her, and she had chosen me, slowly, honestly, fully. If this story found you at the right moment, if it made you feel something you didn't expect, then stay. There are more stories like this, more glances that turn into storms, more nights where a single sentence changes everything.